Hi, everybody. Mike D'Angelo with FandomWire's film writing crew here. Just got out of a screening of Spider-Man Far From Home and wanted to lay out my thoughts as spoiler-free as possible right after the screening here. So, before we get into it, I will say, just to give everybody a gauge of where I am at with Spider-Man, I'm a big Spider-Man fan. I've even got the Mysterio cover wall hanging behind me there. So, obviously, just a fan of both Mysterio and Spider-Man. I've enjoyed the Raimi Spider-Mans outside of Part 3, along with most people. 2 is a really great movie, even despite the fact that I'm not a huge fan of Tobey Maguire. I still think it's one of the better Spider-Man movies ever made. The Mark Webb / Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, it was all right. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. It really wasn't what I was looking for in a Spider-Man. So it wasn't necessarily really anywhere on my radar as far as something I loved or hated or anything like that. It was pretty middle of the road for me. And then when it comes to Homecoming and Tom Holland and John Watts, basically their version of Spider-Man, I've really, really enjoyed. As you'll see in my written interview, I think Tom Holland is the best cinematic live-action Spider-Man that we've seen. I'm a huge fan of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I think that's probably my favorite Spider-Man, even after seeing Far From Home. But that said, I think Homecoming is probably my second favorite. Maybe Far From Home might be a little above that now that I've seen those. So that's a way for you to gauge it. If you're a big fan of Homecoming and the kind of high school teen comedy / action superhero film that they've made, the John Hughesian kind of vibe that they put into Homecoming, if you're a fan of that, you're likely going to be a fan of Far From Home. It's very much a continuation of that kind of vibe. However, it's living in the shadow of Endgame. So it's hard not to address the big elephants in the room when it comes to Avengers Endgame. It would kind of do the character a disservice if they didn't. So Tony Stark was a huge, huge part of Peter Parker's life in the MCU. So it would be really a pity if they just kind of moved on like nothing ever happened. And Endgame and the everything that happened really does loom large over the entire movie. I hope they kind of let that go after Spider-Man, as the entire Phase 4 probably wouldn't benefit from just repeatedly going back to that well. With that said, with this movie, it really feels like as an audience, we still need to grieve. We still need to come to terms with what happened in Endgame, and Spider-Man is a really great way to do that, as he's been such a tight-knit piece with the Iron Man of it all. So, for those that are looking for something as big and MCU altering as Endgame, it's not really that. I'd say expect something more akin to just Spider-Man Homecoming. Even with all the news of twists to be expected in the film, I'd say downplay those expectations as well. There are some twists that are really fantastic, especially in the end credits. In fact, I'd say the biggest twists come in the end credits. There are 2 scenes that I will spoil. I won't spoil what they are, but there are 2 scenes to stay, one mid-credits, one completely after the credits, and both are pretty big in terms of what's going to happen in the MCU going forward. As far as the big twists that people have been talking about in like pre-screenings, as far as like the red carpet premiere and those reactions, I would kind of temper those expectations. If you know anything about Spider-Man, if you're a fan of the character, you kind of know what's coming as far as the big twist of the film. With that said, it was still a really enjoyable and inventive way to do it. So it's not like I saw it coming and was like, oh, let down. They still really executed everything really well. Everybody does a great job. Tom Holland, still my favorite Spider-Man live action. Zendaya was pretty likable as MJ. I liked her last time. She did nothing to dissuade me this time around. Ned, Jacob Batalon is still really great as, you know, the guy in the chair. This time they give him a little love story to go with. Obviously Nick Fury's in it if you've seen the trailers. Maria Hill's in it if you've seen the trailers. And you know Jake Gyllenhaal plays Mysterio, or Quentin Beck, as he's called here. So and Jake is really, really good. Like, he's Jake Gyllenhaal. The only time he's really disappointed you is Prince of Persia, and maybe, you know, something that's not going to mind here. But I'm a really big Jake Gyllenhaal fan. I think, especially recently, he's done some really interesting, you know, choices as far as, you know, Nightcrawler or Nocturnal Animals. Some of the smaller indie stuff that he's done recently. Has just been really, really solid, and just having him in the MCU is an asset, especially when the void that Robert Downey Jr. left is there. So he really takes on that mentor role that they show in the trailers really well, and does well as the Mysterio character, with a different kind of vibe to it. And that's really all I'll say without getting into spoiler territory too much. But overall, really just it's like the vibe of Homecoming with that international twist that you've seen in the trailers. So it's a really interesting kind of spot to put Spider-Man in. Like, he wants to be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, but he has to step up and fill these shoes for the world, basically, that Iron Man left open. So, and it's a really great way to tell that story through that lens of these elementals that you're seeing in the trailers, and the Mysterio of it all, and the Nick Fury of it all needing him to be something he doesn't necessarily want to be, but something he might have to be. So, in the end, I'd give it, 2 thumbs up. I gave the written review, I said 4 stars out of 5. I stick with that. Keep coming back here for FandomWire reviews and news. Check the Facebook group, Instagram, Twitter for all the latest updates. And yeah, we'll see you around, guys.